Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about The Handmaid's Tale, Season 3, Episode 8. It is called Unfit. So, full spoilers for the episode, as always. This one, we get flashbacks to Aunt Lydia, which is kind of notable. First time I've ever done that. And she was a school teacher, which kind of makes some sense given who she is.
Yeah.
And
it was also her second career. She was a lawyer before, I think.
Yeah, she mentioned that at one point. And we get this story of her growing concerned because this young boy in her class, her mother, is late to pick her up one day, and she actually gets to know her mother and kind of tries to help her a little bit, kind of not unlike how she tries to help the handmaids in a weird way. Obviously, it's not as hands-on, but it definitely, you can see kind of the theme.
I mean, they're spending Christmas at hers.
Yes.
It's pretty hands-on.
Okay, it's hands-on, but it's done under a guise of optional friendship, I suppose. Whereas when we see, by the end of the story, of course, she takes some steps that go really, really far. But you know, she gives these every time the mother, you know, swears in front of her child, every time she mentions, you know, whatever guy she's trying to date right now, there's a constant judgmental kind of shock to her, and she tries for a while to help her as best she can, but you know, when I say help her, she tries to convince her to not be who she is. And while she's not necessarily 100% incorrect about everything she's trying to get her to improve upon, you know, like not being late to pick up her son, making sure he has like a decent lunch, things like that.
Yeah, like those things are pretty squarely under the responsibility of a teacher.
Yes.
To keep an eye on those things. Like, oh, you know, he came with a packet of crisps or whatever the lunch was. It was something stupid.
Yeah. So you know, we get that. But one of the things that this mother tries to do in return, again thinking she's having a friendship with Lydia, is buys her a Christmas present, she gets her some makeup, and she's kind of constantly trying to like prod her and convince her to try and date people, and like, no, don't be lonely, you know, go and you know, have a life for yourself, kind of thing. And she does actually convince her to essentially go on a date on New Year's Eve with the principal of the school, who we do see in the opening scene, in the opening flashback, with Lydia. And it's clear that he kind of respects her and how dedicated she is to dealing with things, and there's a bit of camaraderie there. And they're on this date, and you know, they seem to be having some amount of fun. They kind of admit they like each other. The New Year's hits, you know, midnight hits, and it's a kind of an awkward kiss. It doesn't feel very natural, but they keep having fun.
She kind of turns away from the kiss, and it kind of felt like that was the end of it, but then it wasn't. And
then he ends up back at her place, and they're talking about Christmas, and even kind of loosely make plans for next Christmas, which usually suggests you're not planning on running away anytime soon. And she actually does go in for a proper kiss. I never really, if you'd have told me back in episode 1 that we'd eventually get Aunt Lydia having a Frenching scene with someone, I would have said you were crazy, but here we are. But he's actually the one who pulls away this time and says he's not ready, and she feels rejected clearly by this. And you know, it does bring into question, like, you know, while she does clearly have noble goals and she does care about kids and cares about improving things, and that she does have these strong religious standards that she wants to be helped maintained, and
she was very religious already. She's quoting, I can't remember what it was at the start, something from the Bible.
Some chapter. And so we get a clear idea of who she is, but you also get this idea that, like, her own loss and her own insecurity is actually kind of what's driven her to that, like, such strong belief, because it's after this scene where she, like, reports the mother and gets the son taken away, because clearly by this point, because we already see there's a guard in the school, we're already kind of on the path to Gilead. You know, we're already at that place where, you know, because we've seen this in previous flashbacks where, you know, I remember Emily being questioned about things, and
it wasn't an overnight thing.
So we're clearly already in the path, and the guy who's interviewing her says, "Oh, you've done this by the book," and this was really good. And the principal, who clearly at this point kind of like loses interest in her, essentially, is like, "Are you sure this is the right thing to do? Are you sure this?" Like, you know, he looks kind of horrified that she's going through with this. And then the mother comes around, and we have this confrontation where Lydia just, when she's called a bitch or whatever, she's like, I forgive you. And,
Yeah.
this is the best for the child. This is the best for young Ryan or whatever his name was. So it goes through all these things. And this is quite a good I mean, there's a lot of flashbacks in this episode. This is probably a good, 40%, maybe 50% of the episode, I'd say.
Yeah. It kind of feels like the main focus of the episode for sure.
Yeah. The question is, though, do you feel like we got something out of it?
I don't know. Like, a lot of it felt, honestly, like a lot of it felt like I was going through the motions of, oh, here's the past, and like, on one hand, I was like, oh, I kind of want to see her past. She was an interesting character. I wanted to know more. I feel like maybe we got just too much, and it was too kind of just by the numbers.
Yeah, I could see that. I think we have had so many little tidbits about Lydia's character that have been genuinely very interesting, just through how she's interacted with people, moments where she's not been as strict, things like that, that have been painted a kind of a tapestry. And I'm honestly not sure how I feel about like this almost romance that kind of set her back and sent her further down the rabbit hole. I don't know if that simplifies her too much almost.
Do you know the moment I really hated?
Okay.
Just one little. It's when the kid calls her Aunt Lydia. Like don't get me wrong. Like I know, like people do that with like the family, friends, and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But she is still your teacher, mate. And she was your teacher first, so I don't know. It felt weird. It felt like a hey, look at this foreshadowing sort of thing.
I have more problems with you calling him mate than I do have him calling her Aunt Lydia.
What's wrong with that?
It's just, I never say it anyway. I think I'm not a fan of saying mate, but referring to a 6-year-old as mate just feels weird to me.
It's fine. It's not weird.
It's weird.
It's not literal.
I wasn't implying that. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, so it's not weird.
All right. So it just, like this episode was another kind of frustrating one for me. I feel like we're kind of in a lull in the middle of the season. And this, while on paper it sounds fascinating to get to see Aunt Lydia's past, that should theoretically be an exciting thing. I'm not sure how exciting it actually was in the episode.
No, I think it was a little mundane. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't live up to expectations. Like I say, all the little bits with her through interactions have always been so fascinating.
The ultimate point of it, though, like in terms of like on present day story, in terms of like backing up a decision she makes in the episode, is this idea that like thinking of the handmaids as our children in a weird way, that sometimes it's actually the parents, it's the home environment that's the problem. And that leads to her at the end saying, "Oh, I think we should remove you from Lawrence's house. Like, you're not a good fit." And she even ponders that the Waterfords maybe weren't a good fit for you. And that's what all the trouble started was them. That maybe they're to blame. And like, I mean, that's an interesting observation that she even has that much power. I mean, I thought it was interesting that we see her and the other aunts with these files, which I was looking
clearly allowed to read.
Well, I was looking at them very closely. There wasn't a lot of words in them. There was redacted segments, and most of the stuff that I could make out in the files themselves were actually just numbers. The only thing that I could see that definitely had text on it was the names of the families on the front.
But it must have had some level of text for them to be able to go, oh, this is a good fit for these people because of reasons, right? For them to be making those decisions.
Yes. Whether or not they're getting to read that, or like, did they just get to like meet all the families? Like
maybe,
because we do see her visit a lot of them when they have handmaids. I mean, I guess it's not that surreal to suggest that maybe it's almost like an adoption agency where at the start of the process, those who are looking for handmaids. I don't know. It's interesting, but they do seem to have the most power out of all the ladies in terms of this, in terms of the idea of keeping records of something.
They feel they have more power than even the wives, right? Because they're there, they're drinking, and they're kind of just in their own closed rooms, surrounded with files, and I'm sure I remember seeing like books and stuff in the room.
I think it was just more like folders holding these files. I don't think it was books itself. But yeah, I mean that was an interesting sight. but yeah, ultimately it's just to get her to that point, that realization, and her when she's like dealing with and I think me saying that she thinks of the handmaidens as her kids is very apt in this episode, because the opening with June and the other handmaids felt like kid bullying to me. It was very, they're at this house where one of the handmaids is about to give birth, so all the handmaids are there. We've seen this before, and they're all treating of Matthew, June's walking partner, like shit. They're bumping into her. They're not accepting her stuff. One spits on her drink or something like that, or spills her drink.
She does, yeah. No, she spits it.
And she asks June something, and June sort of just blanks her. And in fact, no, the other one comes in and says, "No, don't speak to her." They're all kind of treating her like shit because of what she did.
Yeah.
And on the one hand,
one of my favorite moments that comes from this, though, is Lydia saying to you, going, "Can you just tell him to cool it?
Yeah, tell your friends to kill it. Yeah.
Don't stop it completely. Fine, treat her a bit shitty, whatever. But come on, down a level."
Yeah, because on the one hand, she did get someone killed, right? Who, as far as they're all concerned, and as far as we're concerned, obviously didn't deserve to die.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, the way they're doing it is so childish. It feels it's hard to kind of root for it to the same extent as that feel we should. And obviously, by the end of the episode, because the end of the episode, it makes it feel like June had this master plan to try and get her to, in trouble enough that she'd be killed herself. Like her goal was to have off Matthew killed in some way.
Yeah, I'm not sure I was really feeling this.
I don't think I was either. It really played weird to me. Obviously, before we get there, we have the scene where after this, because of the way they're acting, Lydia keeps them all at the centre, and they form in a circle, and June's in the middle, and they're having...
And they point and chant at the subject.
Yeah, the culprit, or, and it's like testimony, you testify what you've done, right? And she's like, whose fault was it? And they're all pointing at June saying, this is your fault, blah, blah, blah. And June's like, Aunt Lydia of Matthew didn't want to have her baby. And it's like, oh. And again, this felt more like school kids. And on the one hand, I'm like, okay, she's in this position. None of these people have much power. I get why, like, if this is all they can do to make it clear that what she did has upset them all, that what she's did is wrong. And it's almost like she's a narc, right? But in a position where being a narc here actually is like a horrific thing that they shouldn't do, for obvious reasons. And of course, Lydia goes through the process, puts of Matthew in the middle, and makes her admit what she was feeling, and gets them all to chant.
Cry, baby.
Yeah, and they all chant and all the rest of it. And okay, fine. And at the end of the day, Lydia says to June, "Thank you for informing me." And she's like, "You're welcome, Aunt Lydia." And okay, again, I was still feeling kind of awkward about this because it felt so childish the way they were doing it. But I can understand why it is this way.
Yeah.
But when we get to the end of the episode and they're in the supermarket, and Lydia wants to talk to June, and all she wants to talk to her about is what she's decided about June, which is to move her to a different household, which obviously June doesn't want because Lauren's, well, still a dick.
She got some sway there.
She's got some sway, exactly. But June, she there's this shot where she gives, like, off Matthew's watching as if she's worried that she's telling something else about her, like that she's being tattled on in some way, that they're conspiring against her. And June, noticing she's looking at her, gives her this like evil little smirk. Like she sort of turns her head and it's just through the cone, through the wings at the side. You see her smirk. It's basically a moment made just for the poster. Right? This is the image you put in the poster. It's her smirking like this, and she freaks out. Off Matthew does, and starts beating up Janine, who's trying to help her. Janine's like the only sympathetic one towards her, which is interesting because back in season 1, June was the one who's been sympathetic towards Janine. But Janine tries to help her, and she just beats up Janine, and then eventually a guardian comes in. With a can. And then eventually a guardian comes in, and she starts hitting the guardian with the can as well, and essentially either kills or greatly injures the guardian. He's knocked out. And she takes his gun, and I have to say that the direction here felt really strange to me.
Oh, where it did the super barrel view.
It did the first person shooter like view of her looking down, but you had the wings on the edge of the frame, but you had it looking down the barrel as she's looking around and she's going to shoot.
I wasn't feeling this.
This was a really weird scene.
I honestly, even already before we get to that point, I wasn't sure I felt of Matthew snapping to the amount that she did. I felt like I'd never got enough from her to think, oh, she's about to snap and kill someone and go for a gun. That felt like a bit of a leap, but I mean, okay, I can let that slide, I guess. But then I don't know. I didn't really feel June's kind of side of this either.
Yeah, I could have lived with the one side of it. I could have lived with of Matthew doing this, and it wasn't intentional by June. It was just like this is what happened because of the bullying, like almost in a way to like maybe reteach June and the others a lesson as to why they don't just gang up on each other like this. That maybe they're in a fragile state as it is.
Relishing in it.
She's relishing. No, she basically encourages the initial snapping, and then she stays there. And she even kind of like, almost gets Lydia shot. And I almost, are we going to kill Lydia now? Like, is this why she got an episode?
That's what I was saying. When she was playing, I was like, well, if you're gonna, this is the one to do it, right?
Yeah, and because one of the things June says in her narration as she comes in, and she's like, I now know what so-and-so felt like during this moment. And one of the ones she says is, I know what Emily felt like now, the moment before she stabbed Aunt Lydia in the back. And it's like, oh, maybe this is, not that she necessarily planned for Matthew to do this, but now that she's in this position, she's going to be like, hey, her. And she can't, she nudges, she's like, what about Lydia? She's the one that's doing all this to you.
Yeah.
Of course, she gets taken out by the Guardians before she shoots, but we end in this shot where the camera just kind of rolls into June, and she doesn't actually smile, right? She just kind of...
No, she doesn't. She looks very dead, but it feels like she's about to crack into a smile at any second.
It feels very malicious, and it's funny because we were comparing this to Breaking Bad a few episodes ago, and how they were kind of hinting that this is kind of our transition period. And I said, yeah, but they can never actually make her as unlikable as Walter because she's still technically at the center of the show, kind of a hero and a sympathetic figure. This is the one scene they've had where I'm like, I'm not sympathetic towards June in this scene. I'm actually kind of.
Here's the thing: I've been saying for since some point in season 2, I think I've been saying on the record on the show that June has been my least favorite character. My least least interesting character, right?
Sure.
And I said at the start of this season that, maybe, making her the spy master and kind of organizing things would make her more interesting and, help out. And it did for a little bit, and then they kind of veered away from all that stuff. And then I got to this point here and I went, I think she's no longer just the least interesting, but I think I actively dislike her now.
Yeah, this was an unlikable moment for June. And it's funny because it's unlikable because of how she's treating other handmaids. It's unlikable because she's kind of becoming... While understandably why she's at this point now, she's becoming...
But she's treating people who are in the same situation as her.
Yeah, she's lashing out at others. She's lashing out at others that are in the same position, and she's... and I did like a couple of scenes she had in this episode. I liked, the scene with Lawrence, where he kind of concedes and says, hey, you're good with the wife. Could you, play cards with her tomorrow, kind of thing. And I thought, that was a big step for him to actually kind of like admit that, hey, you're good with her. You should spend time with her. And then June kind of throws it back and says, hey, like, you think you're protected, but you helped create this and it's killing her. Like, keeping her here, you could make one phone call and get her out of here, but you're not because you're being selfish, and that's what's destroying her, and it's all your fault. And he's like, I bet that felt good before he walks away. And I like that scene. I thought that was a really well played scene by both, and
I agree.
Set up, again, the dynamic that they have. And even earlier on, when she tries to ask, hey, where did Hannah's family go? He's like, I don't know anyone who knows. Go to your room, leave me alone. Like, their interactions are still very good. This and the funny thing is that I'm sure what we're going through right now will be a big deal for a character in terms of whatever she decides to do later in the season. But it does kind of feel like this plot we've had these last 2 episodes, it's very much been, of Matthew and her influence, and then this episode dealing with that more directly. It feels like this subplot, if you want to call it that, over the course of these 2 episodes, and obviously it was sprinkled in a little bit before, has been kind of a weak spot in the show.
Yeah, these have easily been my least favorite patch of episodes.
And it's funny because, obviously, I remember laughing a lot at her when she told her to, bite me, a few episodes ago. I thought that was a really fun little moment. The actual serious stuff that's come out of it, though, has felt... I don't know. I don't think
it's felt really, truly earned. I don't think... Like, of Matthew, told on the Martha, don't get me wrong, she did do that. But she didn't do it... I don't believe she did it to spite June. I think she did kind of believe in what she was doing, the same way that Lydia does, right? Maybe not as strongly as Lydia, she obviously doubts, but I think she did it because it was what she was supposed to do.
Yeah, I think a better comparison might actually be Janine. There's a period certainly where Janine seems to actually want to do whatever Lydia says is the right thing to do, where she wants to be obedient and be, and just be a good handmaid essentially because she's been broken. And I think of Matthew as someone who's been broken. Joe, I don't want to get too specific here because of spoilers, but it almost reminds me a little bit of Better Call Saul. I'll just say the line that you'll understand what I'm talking about here. He's mentally ill. What's your excuse? The idea that of Matthew's being broken and she's essentially snapped into being this way because this world has beaten her down so much, and now she's being victimized for it.
Yeah, and I think the key thing is we've seen June comfort Janine. Season 1 was a huge deal with that, and not just victimize her and go, "Oh, you're being the crazy person," right?
Yeah.
It was no. We can still talk to her. As this here was. Sure, maybe it was because it was a bit more personal, right? It affected her daughter, but it felt spiteful rather than being supportive like she was before, and that's inherently a lot more unlikable than she used to be.
Yeah, it did feel spiteful. It just like the entire final scene, because I'm not sure, because when, let's say, Walter had a moment like this in Breaking Bad, it was exciting. It was like, oh, like, this is what he's becoming. This is like, because the whole story is essentially a tragedy of the downfall or the...
Yeah, but it got to a point where you weren't necessarily rooting for him anymore. You were just watching the madness unfold.
You were always invested in what the beats of the story were, though, whereas here with June, it's ringing a little bit weird. It's ringing a little bit false, and maybe unearned is the right term for it. Maybe it is just a pure case of we're rushing to this too quickly without building up to it.
Yeah.
But, I mean, because I like her being more ballsy. I do kind of like her. Like, earlier on with Lydia, she says something like, "Are you going to cut out my tongue? Might not look so good if I'm needing on TV again," kind of thing. Like, she's kind of pushing it. She's pushing their luck.
She's talking back to the people in the positions of authority. That's been pretty solid all season.
Yeah. So I still like that stuff.
I think the key difference is here it's her taking it out on someone who's also got no power, someone who's also being victimized and bullied by the system. Of Matthew, she opened up to her and said and told her she was scared and this felt different, this pregnancy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And instead of being sympathetic and trying to help, she just used that and went, "Hey, Lydia," and that's quite vicious.
Yeah, I mean, her acting's good because a lot of the glances she gives during this, where she's like glancing at Matthew or Lydia, all of that stuff looks great in terms of performance.
No doubt about that.
I think for this to work in the long run, like, I mean, we can agree that it's been a rough couple of episodes, and there'll always be a rough couple of episodes. But I think for it to work in the context of the show overall, I think she has to learn that what she did here was not right. She has to have regret over this at some point.
I think so, yeah. Because if this becomes a moment that she's still proud of that she did this, that's it's hard for her to get over, right? Whereas if she regrets it and is like, okay, no, she was broken by the system herself and made a mistake, that's it's more forgivable in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, there's something to be said here where this society is creating and turning people like June and others in the Handmaids into monsters themselves. The idea that they're only becoming this because this is what they feel they need to become to survive.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to Emily last episode, the episode before. She was just in the jail cell. So that place makes us into killers.
Yeah, which I mean, arguably thematically does kind of tie in nicely with that plot. It's just it feels a bit rushed and unearned because I think there's some dramatic points to be made that are very valid about what she's becoming because of what this world has done to her. But
yeah,
it's just. The moment rang really weird for me, and I think some of it was in the direction. That POV gunshot was really...
That was kind of ugly.
It was ugly. It felt very garish. I feel like the first two seasons, season 1 especially, but I think season 2 felt really solidly directed. This season's had a lot of great direction moments as well, but it's definitely had the most out of the whole show. Moments where I go, that's a very kind of in-your-face choice, or that's a very...
Yeah, there was a couple of things that were too blatant. Odd choices we've spoke a couple of times. I mean, was it the start of last episode where they were doing the hanging and we didn't get the direction at the start with the feeling that it was going for being routine.
Mm-hmm. Obviously there was the angel wings, which was just kind of in your face and over the top, and this
yeah.
gun kind of was in that kind of was like, oh, let's do this because it's stylish. We'll just do it because it's stylish.
It
rather
felt
than
like, oh, this will look cool, and it really didn't.
Yeah. Whereas going back to season 1 and season 2, I feel like the direction was always impeccable. Even if you had complaints with anything else, I always felt like it was doing exactly what it wanted to do and how to, reveal. Because I remember season 1. I used to talk a lot about how they directed it in terms of we only saw things if it was something that June could also see. So if she had the wings on, it was a lot of tight close-ups. If it went wider. And when she went to the library with Fred, it became like much more open shots because she was allowed to be kind of more free in there. So like it always matched what was going on in the scenes. Whereas this season, I feel there's a lot of dramatic over the top things. Like even that zoom in at the end, the track in at the end into June.
Yeah,
felt just a little bit over the top.
It does feel like we've lost some of the nuance that we had in the direction. Like let's say even in season 2, like that episode in the snow.
Episode in the snow. I always remember the opening where they go to the baseball stadium. I remember thinking that was impeccable.
Following her around, running around the stadium. Those shots.
Mm-hmm.
Like some excellent stuff.
No, really good.
Direct just hasn't been as strong, has it? There's been some questionable choices, even though there have been some good moments for sure.
Yeah, I do wonder. I'm going to click on the director for the episode and see, like, if
they did previous episodes.
If they've been around. Yeah, they've been around since season 1. This director, Mike Barker, for this episode.
Baffles me then as to where this. It implies to me that the choice is coming from above the directors for some of these things, like the gun barrel.
Yeah, because he had 2 episodes in season 1, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in season 2, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 in season 3. In fact, the next one he's got is the finale. So.
Did he do the last one as well?
I don't know. I'll have to click on it and find out.
Oh, sorry.
He did. Yeah, episode 7.
That's interesting because I think these two are some of the ones who've had the biggest problems with directionally. The opening scene of last episode and and this ending scene of this one are probably directionally speaking the 2 biggest flaws we've had this season yet.
Yeah, he did 1 and 2, then 7 and 8, and now he's doing 13. So.
Just maybe a little less excited for the.
Well, I wonder. He only did 2 in season 1. I wonder if season 1, because given that he's doing the opening and closing episodes, it feels like he's the head director.
It does, yeah.
I wonder if that wasn't the case back in season 1 and 2 necessarily.
Following a more established style.
Yeah, season 2 it seemed like he was though because he did do the first one. But season 1 certainly not. So I don't know. I don't know what to read into that there, but. Yeah, a couple of weaker episodes of this show for me.
It's real disappointing, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see if it has an upswing. It very well could have, because I don't think it's doing anything that's kind of tarnishing the whole show. But I do think June has to regret what she did this episode.
It feels because these 2 episodes in particular I've really maybe disliked is a bit too strong, but have certainly been the weakest.
Yeah,
but, I was having some problems before that with Serena's stuff.
There was no Waterfords in this episode,
no,
at all, which is interesting because they weren't, because I was half expecting to see her at the birthing thing. I was that's right, she's not even in the same town anymore. She's in Washington.
Stuff in Washington, yeah. So is June actually being taken away from Lawrence? Did that get established at the end, or did it just get interrupted and we're not sure what happens? Exactly?
Interrupted. We don't know if that's definitely going on yet.
It feels weird to actually remove her from Lawrence because we've barely done anything there.
Yeah, no. I imagine he'll intercept maybe stop it from happening, but we'll see. Maybe there'll be a whole plot of like convincing Lydia that there's a good place for her or something. I don't know.
I think one of the interesting things that came out of that for me in terms of dialogue, was June said, "Well, I thought Lawrence requested me specifically." Is like, well, tough shit, you can't do anything. And and Lydia, throws back, "Oh well, there's commanders more important than he is," which I thought was interesting, given that we'd seen already that she was the one making the decision. Implying that she'll just use someone else's name to kind of rubber stamp it.
Yeah, it's not that she actually has that much power, but she knows how to play the game or play the system to make it work in her favor. Yeah. I mean, I don't need her to like regret what she did next episode, but I think by the end of the season, it has to be a dramatic point.
Yeah, I agree.
has to be a dramatic point where she kind of breaks down because of what she's done. Or not even, that doesn't necessarily have to break down, I suppose, but just, in some way regrets it. So we'll see what happens next week, but that was episode 8 of The Handmaid's Tale, season 3. So let us know what you think of the episode in the comments below. If you want to support the show and everything we do here, you can head over to patreon.com/MaileFuzzTV, where you can support us for as little as $1 per month. And you get bonuses, exclusives, and some early stuff. You can, of course, follow us on Twitter at mailed_fuzz. You can like and subscribe and all the usual things that help us out. But otherwise, that's us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Have you got any vanilla?